Today, I am joined with author and spiritual medium Austyn Wells and a very dear friend of Sarah and I's. We are so happy to have this badass change maker on with us. And if you don't know about Austyn empowers individuals to create soul centered lives. Very simple, yet very powerful. She's a certified grief counselor, combines intuition and mediumship with shamanism, energy medicine, and sacred ceremony. And today's conversation with Austyn, we're going to be talking about strengthening your intuition and your connection with spirit. And it's so appropriate because Austyn can talk days and days about this as she is completely immersed in this world. And we had a podcast conversation with Austyn. What was that? 2, 3 months back?
I think so.
Something like that. So if you guys didn't check that out, we highly recommend that. That was a deep dive, and we'll probably have many more because we can go down the rabbit hole with her and just go down all different avenues. But today, we are going to focus on the connection with spirit.
Thank you. I am so excited to be part of this foray into helping people just honor their soul and just realize what a delicious surrender it is to just foray into the universe.
Mm, I love that.
hmm
Yes, it is.
hmm
And we have people coming to us from probably all different angles all around the world on maybe just starting their spiritual path, maybe deeply immersed into their spiritual path. But to kind of just start this off and maybe keep it baseline, let's ask first, like, let's talk about what is intuition and how does it help connect us to spirit?
Great question. To me, intuition is connecting to the universe,
Mm,
your energy first and foremost, your spiritual in being. So when you use your intuition, you're kind of like downloading and connecting to that uploading and downloading that the universe always has an available line for. So intuition is the allowance for a guidance to work with you and through you in order for you to gain greater clarity and authentic responsibility with your actions as you're living.
mm. Yeah, and that intuition sometimes, I think it could seem a little foreign to people at first where
Mhm.
they second guess what that voice is or what they're being told, the hunch or the feeling that they're getting to do something. Sometimes they second guess that. It's almost like a muscle that has to be built, right?
Absolutely. Because there's two, I mean, organically, there's two aspects of us. Our human being responds to outside stimulus, and our spiritual being responds to inside stimulus. So the in intuition is that it's an inward feeling before you act out. And that is not how we are trained to respond in this world at all. So it absolutely, but it's so funny is like you watch a kid and you watch it, or any child at play, they're so completely connected to what is around them, so they don't need to work on their intuition because they haven't created or stepped into that illusion that they're separate from things. So they're automatically in communication with everything. That's why they mesmerize us, because you talk about souls in wonder. I mean, they're wonderful and filled with wonder because they've got the inside stimulus and external stimulus, and both, highway lanes are like activating at the same time.
Hmm. Absolutely, and I'm experiencing that right now with baby August and seeing him just be in wonder with the world and just
hmm
so connected and so present and just being around such a powerful being. Yet we look at kids and say, oh well, we just basically say they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're talking about, when they are so connected. And if we tap into that, we can learn so much. But this episode or this conversation is not about kids and how to nurture their intuition. It's about nurturing your intuition. And so when we start to build this muscle and start to dive deeper within ourselves, why is it important that we really trust our intuition? And once we trust our intuition, how can that really enrich our lives overall?
If that duality exists within us, that our human being will respond to what we think we should be, what our social circumstances are, and how we have whatever our upbringing is. That's a very different response than we'll have than our authentic response that our soul comes here to participate in this world differently. So the authentic voice isn't necessarily the first voice that we start using. Even as children, we can oftentimes be diminished, um, and diminished is, I suppose, kind of a harsh word, but we can be disencouraged to not be in the fullness of who we are. And so we learn to kind of work and dance with other people's important ideas and belief systems. So that part of us, if we're really seeking acceptance of others, we're not going to be listening or thinking that there's a wisdom within ourselves, unless in our organic natal birth set we're given people that say you are essentially God's spirit in action. There's a wisdom that is within you, and I want you to really take time to cultivate that relationship as much as you cultivate any other relationship. That's why once people have that idea of, enlightenment, that's really when there's that awareness of, oh, I'm a spiritual being first, then I'm a human being. And
Mm.
that's going to inform all of my conversations, all of my interactions with people. That's the voice, that's the blended voice that, so it allows your human being to have a sense of being informed before making a decision. So then you're organically coming from that place of a soul centered decision, because it will increase how you're progressing. It will help you have evolution in your relationships instead of that looping mechanism that happens when we're just working out a pattern.
Mm. And do you feel that, there is this dance with spirit and the spirit realm as we evolve into this ultimate knowing and trust? Like, what is the progression like from somebody that is just starting to play with the idea of tapping into spirit and trusting their intuition, to somebody that is fully immersed, such as yourself, that is day to day living this experience of always, never second guessing that voice, but listening to
Yeah.
that voice and letting that voice and your soul drive your life?
hmm I think it's best illustrated by, so I'm very blessed to train people, intuitives and mediums, in their progress. And what I love is I do these mediumship practicums, which is classes where people can just practice connecting with the spirit world, pulling in soul information for somebody that they are, partnered with. And in those development circles, my favorite is when I get somebody who has absolutely no experience at all. Because since they don't know what not to do, and because they want to do it right and they want to do it well, their ego can't possibly step in, because the ego's like, I don't know what to do here, I'm going to step aside. So that part of them goes into that like desperate prayer of, God help me with this. And what ends up happening is these people who have absolutely no experience nail it because they're listening, because they don't know what else to do. So they just,
Mm.
all of a sudden, all this information about loved ones comes through, and the evidence is strong, and everything they say is completely appropriate. But then the problem is, then they think, yeah, ego steps in like, yeah, I'm a medium. And then all of a sudden they'll try to do it again. And if they come from that place, they're just running full speed into a wall. So even with developed mediums, we were, I was teaching last night. I had a friend of mine pass away recently who had multiple sclerosis. And I was demonstrating at a church, which means I'm a medium. I'm standing in front of like a crowd of people giving messages. And He was in a wheelchair his entire life, and he all of a sudden I thought I was beginning to connect to this mom, and all of a sudden his name is Devin. Devin came up to me like this close and was spinning around in his wheelchair, and I'm like, oh, I have no idea what to do now. And he put out his hand and he grabbed this young gal about his age in a wheelchair and pulled her right in front of me and went, you know, and I was like, okay, Devin, you're in the lead here. I have never connected to that level of a soul before. Now, think about it as a medium. This is somebody like Devin didn't have language skills when he was alive. So he communicated, but not with language. So many people would think that that particular soul would not be able to communicate because they didn't speak in words. And
Mm.
yet, their consciousness, their soul, that infinite aspect of them, that divine aspect of them, the spiritual aspect of them, is communicating just in all sorts of different ways and is fully conscious during the entire lifetime. So the message, I had to completely trust Devin on this one, and it was such a gorgeous experience because he taught me so much about special needs, and I had to rely on her intelligence to help me with things. And then because I opened that little portal and the spirit world went, oh, fantastic, we've got a new place that we can communicate. One of my clients this week, her sister had Down syndrome her whole life. And she is one of the oldest living Down syndrome children in the world. And
Wow.
so I all of a sudden noticed, so I had to default to everything. I had to open up my soul and just listen. So I noticed. So when you're dealing with your intuition, you have soul feeling, soul hearing, soul smell. All of your senses have a soul component. So I had to say, I don't know your world. Teach me. And the first thing I noticed was my hearing was off. That one ear was completely blocked and the other one. So I said, your sister only could hear out of her left ear because her right ear was hearing impaired. And she said, absolutely. So that's the path of intuition. It is an incredibly deep level of trust, and mediums are trained to make it look seamless. But the process itself is exactly what you do when you learn to trust your intuition. Is I have to be not concerned about the circumstances of my life. I need to surrender to this moment right now and completely release and allow myself to be of service. And then I just open up my perceptions and I go with how I feel, what I think, what I hear, what I smell, what I taste, what I touch, and what I know.
Mm.
And it's so much fun when our darn human being doesn't get in the way. It's a blast. It's like this, it's almost like drugs without drugs.
That's super powerful. That's
Ugh,
very powerful.
such a high, such a high. But that's the journey of it. So really when you're dealing with intuition, when you're dealing with this pathway, it's an unfoldment. It's not an overnight thing. And although sometimes someone will have an experience that absolutely opens their soul and overnight they have psychic awareness or they have an, spirit world awareness, that can happen with a
Mm.
concussion. There's a remote viewer I worked with who was part of Stargate, which was that government program in the 1970s that did, like psychic spying, especially, around the world. He had a bullet hit his helmet, and then they thought he was delusional. He started seeing spirit presences, he started seeing angels, he started seeing another dimension. So it can be a trauma that affects it, but there's you don't have to have some massive circumstance happen in order for your awareness to open, but you do have to nurture it because you're starting a new relationship. So when I do a mediumship session, I'm meeting people for the first time, and all I'm saying is teach me who you are.
Mm.
So when you're building your intuition, you're essentially connecting with the fullness of your soul, blending your human being with your spiritual being and saying, infinite intelligence, here I am. What am I to do? Guide me. Be my internal GPS. Be that part of me that I cannot that I but it's so subtle, and that's the part that throws people off.
That is the part that throws people off, and I can attest to that because being so grounded and so literal, when we've talked about this before, that sometimes it's difficult. I've found it difficult in the past to really surrender sometimes and let myself go and not have the expectations that it's going to be a voice that I'm going to hear a whisper. Rather, like you said, there's these feelings that come up. It could be, again, communicated through synchronicities. It could be the feelings. You can hear something, clairaudience, clairsentience. There's so many different ways. The spectrum is so broad, and it's just I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I have a few more kind of follow up from that. What
Sure.
are the what are the possibilities for us? And actually, let me back up for a second. People that possibly maybe have experienced things such as myself of really having a difficult time of letting go and letting flow just happen. Is there any sort of exercise or thing that they might want to do or something to practice to help to let go of those barriers and those walls for them to start to experience intuition on a deeper level?
When you talk about barriers and walls, it is palpable because it's something you can literally vision in your own mind.
Mm,
I have a wall, I have a block, I'm stuck. That's the human being forgetting it's spiritual.
hmm
So the greatest challenge we have is not the fact that we have to let go and release and do, massive energy things or protect us, whatever. Our greatest impediment or impediment rather is the thinking logical mind. So our brain is created so beautifully to take in new stimulus and information through the nervous system, process it in the brain, create a category for it, and then store it so the next time we witness that thing, we know exactly what it is. The only challenge is when you're dealing with perceiving energy or you're dealing with trusting something that is not known, the literal mind really isn't part of that process. So it's not so much of a release of energy or a disallowing of blocks. It's just a learning to shift from one aspect of yourself to another.
I love that. I love that. And it's I think oftentimes the human mind complicates the these experiences or whatever it is in life that we're attempting or trying to achieve to do, right? It's all about doing,
Mm.
doing, doing, rather than just being, and letting go more and more and more. And then that remembrance starts happening, and then boom, the flow is. And again, sometimes that does take a traumatic event. And it's funny you mentioned that because I can remember back when I was 21, 22, I fell on some ice and cracked my head open. Actually, that was once. Second time, fell down a flight of stairs and hit my head against a cement wall. And ever since that point, my just spiritual quest really was amplified, and not so much where I was experiencing or an out of body experience from what I can remember, but it was just the spiritual experiences in my life, the synchronicities, all of the curiosities I had for the exploration of my own soul started to pop up at that time. So I think, yes, that could be a catalyst, and it often is, but there are other ways and more possibly subtle ways of going about that and through everyday life, right?
We hope so because we don't want to be encouraging people. Okay, so fall down the stairs and all of a sudden everything's going to open up. Yeah, that's we. But thank you for being, the poster boy for accidental intuition. Although I wouldn't call it accidental, but yeah,
No,
that
I
it
was getting slapped over
absolutely.
the head. Wake up,
I
man.
well, yeah, it's okay. But the nice thing is at least you're gravity prone. That's good.
Yeah.
gravity speaks to you and you listen. That's good.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm kind of a dork that way myself. So anytime I've ever in my life taken myself too seriously, I pretty much am going to face plant. Like it's kind of how it works for me. So I try to stay on the humble side because then I don't have to worry about gravity kind of going, oh, Austyn, you know,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So what are the possibilities for us as humans as we wake up to our human potential, our spiritual potential, our infinite potential? What are the possibilities for us individually and collectively as we move into this space?
Great idea. And what an inspirational one with that. If our if the aspect of us that's the doer would be first inspired by the being, our actions would have more global impact, would have higher global impact.
Hmm.
It, when we are blessed by souls like Paul Selig, when we're blessed by Esther Hicks, when we're blessed by these people that allow their souls to be open to this idea of being a conduit of spiritual communication, to remind all of us that we are guided and that there are these beings and it's that guide us, that protect us, that are really ensconced in every single thing that we do. I think our focus would be less individual and more collective. So the hope would be when we're doing, we're pretty much individual. When we're being, there's a sense of connection and there's a larger sense of community.
Hmm.
So the loss of community, which is the indigenous people, the reason I think why some of the indigenous aspects of spirituality have been woven back into our consciousness is because it was always part of the indigenous nature to be communal, to rely upon each other, to assign and cast different people, but not to discard and not to um, forget history. Everything was a verbal translation. Everything was communicated that way. And there was such no. If people were ill, everybody was part of it. If somebody was there was a birth, everybody was there. If there was a death, everybody was there. So that idea of shared experience, which is really, in a sense, you could look at intuition that way. It's a shared wisdom. It's taking the extension and the growth potential of your own soul and allowing the spirit world to give you a little bit more so you can go a little bit more prepared into the next moment. And in that way, you're really progressing your soul when you're working with intuition because it automatically puts you in a higher level of service. Now, you can certainly have your ego be a strong leader and use intuition for your own good.
Mhm.
But I have found that the spirit world, and when we're talking about who we're connecting with, it's really kind of a great conversation because we always talk about the spirit world. Well, the spirit world is a dimension of the universe. The spirit world are those beings, primarily ancestral beings, that have connected to us, or animals that have connected to us in one way or another. Whether you could put ascended masters in that realm because ascended masters are souls who have walked the human experience and then chosen to transcend and be of service to those of us that are still figuring it, trying to be spiritual in physical form with a sense of individual identity instead of a reminder that the truth is the collectiveness and the connection of all. So the spirit world is only really one bandwidth by which we pull in information. And I know that there are greater guides that have not necessarily all walked this experience, but have amazing intuitive and spiritual insights about our experiences that distill into our consciousness if we allow. And that's where, when people foster meditation and foster just that surrender within yourself to find a deeper sense of peace, or to find it's not a deeper sense of peace when you can have the audacity to practice surrendering inside of yourself to what you do not know and hang out there long enough. It becomes this limitless landscape of extraordinary beauty and possibility that is so much more vast than anything we can physically create or witness. And it's just the modality that intrigues you.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to look one way at all. And I think that's why people get kind of frustrated about meditation. They're like, I can't meditate. Well, the statement is true for the doing of them, but the being part of them knows how to meditate because that's their spiritual upline. So when someone says they can't meditate, it's because they need to, the practice of their mind having stillness is not something that's been cultivated or probably introduced as a really good idea.
Hmm.
And yet we sleep every night and we go into a place of quote unquote unconsciousness and we dream. So clearly that capability is there. We just take all the darn fun out of it. It's the best experience. It's such a natural high that I just get sad about how much we take how much joy we zap out of our experience because we think we can't do it.
Hmm. And it's those labels that we put on ourselves that we can't or we shouldn't or whatever it
Mhm.
might be that really, yeah, if you can't and you're telling yourself you can't, it's a
Yeah,
belief that is rooted within yourself and therefore
yeah.
then manifests as you can't or you aren't going to be able to do it, but yet it's always there. And as you mentioned before, it's this endless stream of communication that literally is almost like a light switch that when turned on, it's ever flowing if we are able to maintain that state of connection and awareness.
I think it's part of the reason why we have extraordinary experiences in our life of either of experiencing different degrees of our mortality, whether
Mm,
it's a close call with ourselves, which immediately puts a completely different perspective on your life and what's important and what's not important. A pivotal event where all of a sudden you haven't talked to someone for a long time because you just haven't talked to them. And then this event happens and you think, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I need to call them right now. Or you witness somebody's death. And those experiences put you so close as your spiritual self is awakened in those moments and is so palpable that it's almost as if the universe conspires to intervene just to remind you that they're still there. So it's not as if they leave. There's this constant tending and nurturing that is with all of us at all times. And prayers do get answered. We may be the ones that don't believe it's true, but the power of our beliefs to create our experience is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. But in those moments where there is something really profound that happens that scares us, the funny thing is one of the first things that people do is pray. Oh God, help me right now. I don't know what to do. Be with me right now. And these can be people who have had no faith in anything, but as a last straw, what they'll do is go, and they'll reach up and they'll grab for this unknown. And yet they tell themselves it's not possible just in everyday life. So sometimes the awakening that happens through adverse situations is such a blessing. It's not always the easiest thing, but it's an awakening that's necessary because we go to sleep. We nine through part of our lives. We go unconscious and it's a you have to That's also the beauty of the practice too, of any kind of spiritual practice, is the reminder of the gift of this moment. I just studied for a week at a really beautiful campus called the Esalen in California, kind of like Omega on the East Coast, really
Mhm.
groovy place. And I worked with a Tai Chi master who had worked with Alan Watts, Aldous Huxley, and Joseph Campbell. And he is this amazing Tai Chi master, and he's this gorgeous dancer. But every single thing, so you were asking about, how do we work through blocks and how do we work with that? It's the reminder in the practice of realizing that the essence of us is energy, the essence of us is spiritual. So there's nothing in the spiritual and in the energetic universe that's static. So you can move and shift and dance your energy into a completely different space. That's the power of love. You could be having an awful day, and then somebody that you love calls you and says, "I love you," and you're like, "Oh, I love you too." You like forget all this stuff. So we're really much more mutable. So he started every single exercise by just bringing us up and like putting our hands into heaven and just going, "Wow." So every single motion began with this sense of wonder
Mm.
and wow. And from that perspective, you're ready. Like it's just a moment that you get to swim in and find out what's there.
Got chills thinking about that, and wow, that's quite the experience.
As a father, you're experiencing that every day. You're witnessing, and you need to talk about Mr. August being in the world because the benefits and the blessings that that young, plugged in essence of spirit is going to teach you, and that you can share with others and share as a learning father and as a stepping into a brand new role is extraordinary.
Yeah, that's something that it's being cultivated. There's this, and I talk about it, obviously loosely with family and friends and all of that, but it's starting to like it's almost like I have to share this because the transmissions are so incredibly potent that it's unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I know we talked a little bit offline and you got to meet him briefly offline that, it's just wow, like this is the direct connection to source. And when I go to sleep at night, I am right next to him and I'm feeling his presence. And yeah, children are a wonderful way to tap into that and to tap into that energy. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. But there are so many avenues and like you said, there are these different avenues because they resonate with different people. So
Mhm.
Tai Chi, meditation, shamanism, energy work, whatever, the list goes on. It's all under one roof. It's just different ways of approaching life and the way we connect every day. So there are, asking you what are some practical ways or things like that. Again, it just depends, I think, on the person. Am I
Mhm.
correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Each discipline that you encounter has a different gift to offer. I found an amazing empowerment by studying shamanism, by essentially going to college for shamanism, for walking that indigenous path and witnessing how my beliefs actually created static, uh, a sense of almost static energy because I had held something so tight that it was disallowing something else to be shifted and moved. But that kind of, if you think of the blocks that we have, kind of like a solar system that is the planets orbiting, and you're the sun, and all the things that you're working on are all these planets that are going in different orbits, and when they come within the light side of your sun and you can actually see them, that's the opportunity to shift and transition them. So whether you are studying meditation and learning how your soul connects with the universe, whether or not you are working with empowering yourself through shamanic connections, finding the spirit within the natural world, which is a very, very different energetic presentation. we're very Judeo-Christian, and everything is like, God's like, "Oh," but to be reminded that this space between us, holding a child, and even that single space there, there's space between our molecules, there's space between, and that's what's filled with spirit. But to connect the dynamic, the power of your own soul, and root it into the earth like a tree, and then allow your spirit to fly that way. Um it's it- it's it was one of the most power it was the best recapture of myself in a completely different way. And it gives you such a different idea of animals and nature and all that. So when people are wanting to develop their intuition, it doesn't have to look a certain way at all. And it will absolutely guide you, as will the experiences of your life will start be heading you in that direction. But it's super easy to practice.
I think it's
Super easy to
also,
practice.
and I couldn't agree with you more. I think what's most important, at least it has been for me, is really just setting that intention every day, where I set myself up and or wake up and set my intention to have spirit, have my higher self show me what it is I need to see today, what I need to be today in service of others, or whatever it is, your intention is, whatever it doesn't, something along those lines. But it's setting that intention and then allowing whatever it is to come through and surrendering to that, right? And that's that practice alone has been super powerful, yet it's very subtle. So there's different things that happen through the day where we might pass as something that's, it doesn't matter, or it's, I don't need to know, whatever it is. There are little moments that we need to really, and that's the importance of presence and mindfulness throughout the day. But again, I can talk about this probably for a long time, as can you. But I think you're right. Just really boiling it down to, there are ways to connect. You find your way, and you might have to explore several paths. But once you find that path that helps you connect, going out in nature, taking a walk, sitting and meditating in your meditation space, whatever it is, um, it's just as equally as important as the next person, you know.
Hmm.
So
And it's so funny when we have the visual of a path, we think of a single direction instead of thinking of the path like water being like a river with little tributaries that go off on the side. And there is so many things that will be brought to you. And I think that's the excitement of the universe when your light gets turned on a little bit. They want to overwhelm you. So when you were talking about setting an intention, I think we don't we don't ask enough. That's one of the things I hear a lot from the spirit world is like, we're here to help. Like, we don't do it with each other. So why in God's name should we trust a whole bunch of invisible whatevers to help us out too? So we get discouraged by our own human friends. So then we have a hard time trusting something we can't see, which makes sense. But it's that, and then it's also having the audacity to demand what you deserve. So what they're asking and what you're being guided to is, since the spirit world, and I mentioned that dimension in particular, the spirit world cannot intervene on our behalf unless we give them permission.
hmm.
That also includes your higher self. So the first thing, if you want to start really focusing on your intuition, give your higher self permission to intervene on your behalf when you are either going off path or really need to be paying attention. That was something that we played around with the idea of when I was studying shamanism. And once I really knew that that was installed and that was activated, I actually looked back on my life and knew moments that my higher self had intervened. Now, yes, I had said in this moment, please intervene. And it didn't, but then not only did it happen in subsequent moments going forward, it happened in the past. Because when something is installed on the energetic level, it's all time. So then you can facilitate issues from past lives. Then you can really get into some soul healing just because you say, I give permission for my soul to be informed by a power that is greater than my own, blending with my own ability to perceive, and then I will bring that forth in the world. And the best way to make sure that the information is pure is the surrender to spirit, the surrender to service. Because when you come to that place in your life where you say, I am a conduit of consciousness and I am divinely guided in all things I do. So honestly, my choices need to be informed by an infinite intelligence because I'm here to be of service. And if that's the case, and I'm always making and I'm the only thinker, I'm limiting the ability of my soul to authenticate in this experience and truly understand why I am here. And with those permissions given, your life becomes extraordinary in the most ordinary moments.
That is, yep, that's the quotable moment right there. What you just said. That is it. And as I think Oprah says on her show, that's tweetable or whatever she says. But no, that clip right there is exactly what I'm talking about. That is a pure intention that is so clear and direct that you can't, like, your path will just light up and
Mhm.
will ignite in so many ways. So I really appreciate you sharing. And that is the best practical tip I think anybody could offer on this path of self-discovery. So man, that's really powerful. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, and I think because the spirit world, it speaks to so much. It speaks to how little we value our power and how much we diminish our own potential to be God in action, spirit in action, infinite intelligence in action. And we think that we only can have so much. So we use that power of intention, that power of activating the spirit world to work on our behalf for a greater good, for something like a parking space. And you're like, awesome. So that works. So let's think a little bigger now. If that's the case, look at where your passions are. Look at where you get pissed off about stuff in the world. And then realize that if you're really activated by inhumanity, if you're really activated by animal rights, if you're activated by narcissists, if you're whatever it is that you're activated, when people say to me, I don't know why I'm here, I want to know what sparks their soul. Good, bad, and indifferent. That's the places where those tributaries will take you on the wildest adventures. But in order to get to that point, we have to work through all of the things that we're taught to be and find the grace and the gratitude in that. Because then that homework piece is done and then we can be of service. Because then we're like, okay, cool. Now that I know exactly who I am and I'm super grateful for that. My mom was a narcissist and so she taught me to be who I am. I love you. Awesome. Thank you. Instead of like, oh, my mom, like I totally hate her. I don't ever want to talk to her again. I understand we all go through that metamorphosis in our lives. We all go through the victim. And part of the reason why there's a rise of narcissism, I believe, in our culture right now is because it either puts people in rescuer or it puts them in victim.
Mm.
And those two roles need evolution as much as narcissists need evolution, perpetrators, that role. That needs evolution. That whole drama triangle that we get ourselves into, those three roles that automatically just put you in the sinkhole of humanity, that needs to be percolated right now because in order for there to be profound transformation, in order for us to step up to the levels of deeper service, we have to better the human exchange. We have to better how we work. But that only happens when you can have that objectivity. And the human aspect of your soul cannot be objective. The spiritual aspect of your soul is. So when your finite self, your human being, allows that infinite spiritual aspect of your soul to step out of circumstances and say, what is the gift in this? What am I learning? How are these crazy people gifting me with something to help my evolution? And I'm participating in their thing too. Wow. What am I going to take on board now? And then once you figure that out, you'll be grateful for the craziest people. And that's also a way that your intuition works too. It's trusting the fact that you're drawn to circumstances that are perfect for you, not that everything's happening to you and your life sucks.
Mm. So much wisdom, so much that you've brought us. This conversation is so important to have. And I'm so glad that just to really dive into this, because you are right, this sense of, and this notion that things are happening to me rather than for me, right? That these shitty experiences, are quote unquote shitty experiences, are happening to me and I can't get out of them. Well, maybe it's just your best friend trying to wake you up a little bit and bring you to that next level, right?
And also, most people that are going to be listening to this, most people that are going to be inspired by soul to soul conversations, that are going to be inspired by soul and wonder, are people who are the activators in their family. They're the healing agents. They're the ones that came in to wake the family up, not by being disruptive, not by being angry, but by being peaceful warriors within a circumstance that needs enlightenment. So people that are seeking their soul are know on a core level, their soul is already driving them to go toward that place where they can hold the circumstances in their life as gifts. So they understand that they contribute and create, and almost like clay mold the person that they become, that then becomes that service agent in the world. That's why people become therapists when they have dysfunction in their families. There's so many ways that I witness the gorgeous completion and cultivation of how a soul becomes who they are based on the circumstances of their life. So the intuition is trusting the fact that everything's happening to help you out.
Hmm.
And by cultivating that voice and by listening to it, that's what you'll get. You'll get that reminder of gratitude. You'll get that updraft, and it's fun.
It's a damn good
It's
time.
fun.
Oh man, this has been great, Austin. I really, really appreciate your presence, your wisdom, and everything that you've gifted us. And I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, but if anybody that is tuning into this has not checked out her book, Soul Conversations, you need to get that, number one. Number two, you need to check out her podcast, and or our podcast with Austyn, that we go down many more rabbit holes, and we continue to do so and will in future episodes. So um, yes, just so happy to have you here. And so, what updates, what things are you up to in 2020? What are you bringing to the world that you can share? Because I know there are going to be many people listening to this that are going to want to know how to get in contact with you and what can they do to explore this further.
So thank you for the promotion on my book, which I'll just bring into the screen because I have it, or
Please
you can
do.
probably insert it. So this is Soul Conversations. This is my book. And the part I want to, like, since we're talking about intuition, downloadable meditations. Yay. So
Mm.
once you get my book, there's like 22 downloadable meditations that can take you from, I want to learn an animal. I want a guide to teach me how to listen to my intuition. I want to talk to my archangels. I want to talk to my loved ones. I want to talk to my pets in spirit. So I wrote this with stories of my own experience, but really primarily to help you figure out how to listen to yourself, how to fall in love with your soul and the exploration of your soul, and just know you're so important to this world. Your soul makes a difference. The world would be completely different without you. And you need to cultivate that magic and that miracle that's you. So that's the hope of the book. In 2020, I'm very excited. I am creating a little bit of a member site where people can get astrology information, meditations. I do a monthly soul conversations um, that allows us to talk about spiritual principles and ask questions. It's meant to be cultivating to exactly where you are, not forcing an agenda, but giving you kind of that spiritual updraft every month. I teach mediumship practicums, which are open to anybody. And also, it helps work with your intuition. So, those are great classes that are available. Then I speak at conferences. I'll be in Chicago in June, and I'll be in Sun Valley the end of June for a wellness festival there. So I'm really blessed. I teach a lot. So I love online learning. And then people can also individually work with me in a mentorship capability, in a coaching capability. Um, I can do, celebrate the gift of your soul and help you with where you're going and help you vision business ideas or things that you want to do in that. And then I can also talk to your loved ones in spirit, plus throw in a little shamanic magic along the way. So, my whole platform is about helping you find the sacred in all the moments of your life, especially sometimes the adverse ones, because death can be such a transformational experience. And your loved ones are so close. And sometimes you just need someone to help you learn how to connect with them. So I'm super excited about 2020.
Yeah, I am too. I feel the energy already behind it. It's the momentum moving into 2020, and this will be airing in 2020. So we'll be starting the year off right with this interview and all the other interviews.
Yeah.
And I do have to give one more shout out because I had a session with Austyn, and it was
Mm.
one of the most powerful sessions that I've ever had in my entire life. Since the moment I worked with Austyn in our soul gardening session, my life and my intuition, just what needs, my life has been great. I've had a lot of incredible
Mm.
moments, a lot of things happening on my spiritual path, but my spiritual path was ignited after working with Austyn and going through a soul gardening session. So if you could do yourself just one thing, do that for yourself and watch your life unfold, because it's helped me in so many ways. So if you could take anything from this, there are many tips, there's many things, but check that out, do that, and you won't be disappointed. So thank you so
And the
much,
cool
Austin.
thing also, you're so welcome. And the cool thing also that came out of your session was this idea of this summit, was this idea of creating this conversation. So it's
Yep.
another great way that the spirit world said, he's ready for this. Let's empower him for this. Let's get him ready. Let's put these ideas in his head. Let's activate, let's spark up what's going on with them. And I mean, I'm so impressed with the people you've been able to bring together. And then I just feel so honored to be part of the conversation. So
Well,
yeah,
it wouldn't be
spirit in action.
an event without you. So we are just
Thank
so
you.
happy to have you, and who knows what's to come in the future. I'm just really excited to for all your work and everything
Thank you.
that's happening. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us, and we'll be talking with you hopefully soon.
It's a deal, and I absolutely look forward to it. And thank you for this awesome opportunity.